This one's working too. Okay, so welcome to the first training session of your participating in our Sunrise program, which is a clone of the original Sunrise program that's based in Sheffield, Massachusetts, at the at the Autism Treatment Center of America, which is where they teach the Sunrise program. I have two cameras going now, so it's like there's two people here because one of mine is a little faulty, but one of these should work. One of these takes should work. Okay, so again, I run a Sunrise program, which is modeled on the one that recovered somebody named Ron Kaufman completely from autism, and we are going to be learning the techniques and the attitude that they used to recover him. You can see this is the book by Ron Kaufman that describes their original program, but not in as much detail than how-to way. And when you participate in our program, you learn a lot about it. It's not the same thing as going to the Institute. If you go to the Institute, you get to meet the actual principles of the program. They'll teach you things in a way that's an experience. This is more like describing what to do during your first session, so you know when you go in the playroom with my daughter who has autism, you know what to do, and you can focus on some things and understand that we could teach a course that lasts several weeks or a really long time on the same material, and they actually do at the Institute. They teach, I think it's at least 3 basic programs. There's kind of an advanced thing that they teach as well. That's like where you go take your child up there. But we're going to learn some things to focus on so that you don't feel overwhelmed, because if I try to tell you all the things that you could do in the playroom that I do right now, because I've been doing this for actually almost 6 years, or I think it's a little more than 6 years, you will be overwhelmed and you won't be able to focus on our child, which the whole point of it is for you to create a loving, warm connection, and you can't do that if you're just like, there's this, oh, I had that, oh, I didn't think that, whatever. So let's just focus on these 4 things. So I'm going to be doing is giving you a list of 4 things that I find are what I call the bread and butter of the Sunrise program here, meaning it even on a, quote, bad day, even on a day where, let's say, you're having trouble, you had a car accident, you're having a fight with your spouse or whatever, and you want to go in this playroom with a child who has autism, the things that you're doing most of the time on even a bad day, but even on a good day, most of the time you're doing these 4 things like underneath everything else. Even if you have really advanced skills, you're doing them like breathing in there. So we're going to learn them first. You focus on them for a while, and later you learn more advanced skills, but we start with the basic ones. And so the 4 that I've identified are things to really think about most in your first session, which is going to be about 2.5 hours, is we start with the fundamental underlying attitude, which is an attitude of love, being loving, accepting, non-judgmental, and happy by choice with the child you're with and with yourself and with the whole entirety of what you're doing in there. Which means if you're going to be loving and accepting and non-judgmental, that includes not judging yourself like, oh, I missed that. Oh, I hate that I did that. And like if you get into any type of judgment, even of yourself, how you're applying what we're teaching, if you do that, you're not going to be present and really loving or able to love another person. So when you go in there, you want to really focus on enjoying yourself in the presence of another person, just being happy with them regardless of what happens. And with a child who has autism, you have to think of it that no matter what you do, they're going to go into their own world for part of the time that you're there, which is partly why they're called autistic. And we'll talk in a minute about what the features of autism are. But when they go into their own world, you have to decide before you go in, that they're just, it was wonderful, it's really great to love them, it's really meaningful that you're there, whether they're in their world or whether they're really interactive like a normal child would be. And so you don't decide like, oh, she was like with me and I was so happy and we were playing, oh, then she went into her own world, and then like you want to be like really happy no matter whether she's in her own world or out with us. And actually, let's pause for just a second and talk about what it means to be autistic, because that is maybe something that would help inform you with the attitude. Okay, so basically when somebody's autistic, they have certain characteristics, including the most notable of which is that they go into what they call into their own world, or do something that they withdraw and away from the outside world. Not just from you, but also from everything in their world. So kids who have autism could be in a house that's on fire, and they could just be hiding in a closet like a regular kid, but they wouldn't even maybe be aware, or they could even not be aware that there's a fire. They might not even listen to you, and they could burn up in the fire. So like they're really like withdrawing from everything. It's not like they're saying, I just don't want to be with this person, or I'm not listening to you. It's more like they just withdraw. period. Like they could be in the woods with nobody there, and they'll be like not paying attention. They'll be being stalked by a leopard or something. Which is, I mean, they're not really completely safe when they're in their own world because they're not aware as much of the stimulus around them, or they're not reacting to it. Okay, so but they go into their own world, and the other thing is they have what's called an aversion to novelty, which means they don't like new things. And these two qualities were identified by the first people who described autism. There's Hans Asperger, this guy in Germany, and then there's oh, it's so funny that I'm forgetting his name right now. The guy who described it here in America, it'll come back to me later. Cannon, who was a doctor, and he figured out regular autism, but Asperger actually figured out more the sophisticated high-level autism. But they kind of describe the same thing because they're on a spectrum from severe to mild. And so the aversion to novelty means that this child is not easy with like you saying, hey, let's play cards. And they're like, sure. Like they don't do that. Like it's usually like it's hard. Like, I'm not used to cards. I don't know how to do that. So we're going to be working on things that help the child feel really comfortable coming into back out into our world, invite them in a way. And also that help them enjoy our input. Like, hey, like, can you come over here? Oh, look at this. I really like to look at this thing over here. And the child is like, oh, really? Let me see. But normally autistic children are not really flexing to what you're asking. It doesn't feel good to them to take on what you want to do. So the attitude helps make a child feel, it makes it more likely that they might take the belief that it's easy to be with this person. I enjoy looking at this person. When I look at this person, they seem to like me because they're being really happy and they seem to enjoy when they're with me. So you want to be loving and happy every time they look at you. So let's say they're really nervous looking at people's eyes, and then they look at your eyes, and you're kind of like coming out of a scowl or really neutral. They don't feel really like you were welcoming. But if you're always kind of like, oh yeah, I'm really ready for that look all the time, the attitude helps you invite more looks because the child feels like when they look, they have a high chance of seeing a person who really seems happy to see them. Let's say, okay, so that again, that attitude or that loving, accepting, happy, emotional environment that you're creating for the child helps invite them out of autism, which is actually the most fundamental thing you want to do in the whole program. So if you remember only one thing, it's that. Okay. Moving to this, and let me say one last thing, which is really the child. We believe our program is based on a philosophy that people choose how they feel and what they believe, which also fuels how they feel. So you don't have to go in there. If you don't go in there saying if she looks at me, I'll be really happy, because then the opposites of that, the flip side of that is if she doesn't look at me, I'm not going to be very happy. So like you really want to go in there not requiring a precondition, not thinking, that there's nothing that she has to do to get that from you. And then we just go from there. And then there are things that we add like, oh, that's good looking, and things we add on top of that are sort of like punctuate the happy attitude, but the happy attitude is by choice. Okay. The second thing is that we join in the child's activity when they go into their own world. And when we say that the reason that we have joining is it's really an outgrowth and an embodiment of the attitude, because if somebody decides that they really want to like do this, my daughter will do this, she'll hand flap or she'll talk to herself, she'll say something like, Jackson, stop that, Jackson, like it's Hannah Montana. She'll talk like Hannah Montana did in the show. Okay, so she's doing her own thing. If you're like, I ain't gonna do that, like I'm gonna sit here. If you're just like, I'll do this, I'll talk to you, we're having fun. I say, oh, those are nice glasses, can I try them on? We have this whole conversation. And then she starts to do this, and I'm just like, I'm just like one way here. Like there's a really high likelihood that they could take the belief from that this person doesn't like that activity. She seems like she likes it when I throw the ball. She likes it when we read the book. She's all happy. She likes to be with me when I'm talking to her. But then as soon as I do this, she just like doesn't want to be with me. She seems not happy. So you want to really be like loving her activity and her choices in addition to just being loving. And joining is a way of expressing that when a person goes into their own world, which means usually that they're being overwhelmed sort of neurologically. They need the space. They need a break. They can't handle it. And you want to accept that and go, oh, okay, so if she's doing this, she used to put her hand here on her eye. If she's doing that and you were doing that, she's like walking around, let's say doing that, like staring at the ceiling, she can look over and see that you maybe like what she likes, which is the foundation of actually feeling like you could be friends. She might be like, wow, I could be friends with Stephanie because she seems to really like doing this. Wow, she does it just like me. That kind of thing. Where when people come, people first go in the playroom, the child usually has never seen anybody do what they do. Nobody does what they do. Whatever they do is usually very idiosyncratic. One child might do what I just showed you. Another child might just be like going, like rocking. It's a very different. And they usually have never seen a person do what they do. So of course they feel like I'm just this, not like any of these people. And so we want to embrace them by doing the thing. And the people who did our program, that was one of their most fundamental things they did because their son was so severe. This guy, Ron Kaufman. That's him as a baby. Anyway, so he was so severe that they really couldn't talk to him. At the severe end of the autism spectrum, people don't communicate at all. In some cases, they never even make sounds of words. They don't look at you at all. They don't receive or enjoy your touch. They don't look at you, your eyes ever, and things like that. He was in that category, and just by joining him and being in that attitude, he started looking at them. So those are the two most powerful things of the program. To me, those are like the biggest engines of, even if the child's never doing something interactive, you can make progress because you do those two things. Okay, so the third thing is, okay, so let's imagine the child is in your world, meaning she comes at, you're doing this with her, you're doing the hand flapping, whatever, which by the way, if you actually do it, the child does tend to come out of their, what we call isms, which is where they go into their own world. They come out of their isms faster and more frequently, and they have more availability even during when they're isming. They start talking to or receiving information, even communicating while they're still isming. My daughter would sometimes do this thing with the side-looking thing, and then she would talk to me during it, and then pretty soon she would like look at me as she was doing it and having a conversation, which is pretty wild, like while she was isming, and then pretty soon she stops doing isming. So kind of like the isming, it's like it starts disappearing without you waging war on it, which is, I often say it that way. Like other people are like, stop that, put your hands down, don't do this, don't do that. But actually in our program, by doing the thing and going with it and embracing it, it ironically and paradoxically goes away. And there's a lot of things in our program that appear to be paradoxes, but they're actually just sort of truths of the universe in some way. I think that's really a fascinating program. We can talk more about the philosophy later. Okay, so let me review again. So the first thing that we're going to have is a choice, an attitude of love, acceptance, not judging, and being happy by choice. The second thing is, as an embodiment of that, we're going to have this technique called joining, which is when a child appears to drop off from the typical indices of interaction, which means they're not looking at your eyes anymore, they're not talking to you, they're not really responding to what you say. At that point, you do what they're doing. Like, okay, you're having a conversation. Hey, that's a really nice sweater. And you'd be like, yeah, I got it yesterday at wherever store. And then I would be like, let's say I'm Anna, it looks like a leopard. And you could say, yeah, it does. It looks like it's got spots. And then pretty soon you might say, I have another one at home that looks like a zebra. And then nothing comes back. Not a look, not a response. At that moment, you just assume she's assuming. Do what she's doing. Even if you're mid-sentence, just do what she's doing. I remember singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm when she was younger. And she used to like to sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And so we'd be like, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on this farm we had a... And then halfway through, I realized she's staring off to the side. And in the middle of the sentence, I'm like, on this farm we... Then she'll look back and she'll say, and on this farm, I'll be like, yes, and on this farm we had a good looking. And you go right back to what you're doing. So it's like hitting the pause button. Then you resume. Okay, so that's a little bit about joining. There's a video that's in the Autism Solution that's put out at the Institute. I didn't bring the disc over here. I don't have it handy. But basically, it's called the Autism Solution, and you can find it on YouTube at the Autism Treatment Center of America website on YouTube, and I think also on Facebook or one or both. There's a section on joining. I'm going to show you that video. It's about 5 minutes. Okay. It shows autistic kids doing all these different types of isms, from sort of really severe to more sophisticated kids. So for example, Anna is now spanning all of them. She used to do quite a variety. She isn't somebody that all day long she does spinning wheels or certain things. She actually varies quite a bit. So she'll walk in patterns. Like I show these kids like kind of like walking around the room like kind of in patterns. She totally did that. She's done headstands. Like her ism was headstands one time, where she would do headstand after headstand after headstand after headstand, which by the way you'd want to join safely. So you find a way to do something upside down, but not necessarily headstand, so you don't hurt your neck. I mean, you have to do things safely and appropriately. She takes her clothes off. You don't pretend to take your clothes off, but you don't actually take your clothes off because your neck can't do that appropriately. She does things that are more sophisticated, like the Asperger's kids. Like she'll actually get obsessed with the topic and want to talk about the topic. Hey, did you hear I got a Pinkie Pie My Little Pony, she's really into this right now. Did you hear that? And then she will talk about the Pinkie Pie. Did Pinkie Pie do this? And how about this? And how about that one? And she'll go into that. And then with that, she's obsessed with the topic, and you want to dive in and be like, yes, I like, oh, I've never seen My Little Pony, but those are really cute ponies. And you can find a way to connect to it. Like, I really liked ponies when I was a kid, and I wish I used to ask my parents, can I have a pony? And they never said I could have a pony, but I love ponies, or I love the color pink. And you find a way to connect on the topic, even if you don't really, weren't into Pinkie Pie and the ponies. Okay, so let's move along so that's basically joining. We did the attitude and joining. Now, when she's interactive with you, you want to celebrate in some way that this is hard for her, and it's like great that she's doing it. So what I think of it is like, it's like a person who is in a wheelchair, like figuring out how to like kind of like they're like trying to move their legs like this, and you're just like, you would be like, oh, that's good. Move your leg. Oh my gosh, you lift your leg. A person who's coming out of like a car accident or a stroke and they're in therapy. You wouldn't just the most effective therapy would include helping the person feel really excited about what they're working on. That's challenging. That you would like them to walk faster, let's say. So we become cheerleaders, like actual unabashed cheerleaders of the things we want. Which, why wouldn't you do that? If you can use every tool that's available attitudinally, why wouldn't you do that? That's kind of a rhetorical question. So I've seen people at doing other therapies that have been at doctor's offices, and they were like, oh, look, my son has really good eye contact. Look at that. And the son is like looking right at them, like, and they're just like, yeah, look at that. It's pretty good. We gave him like a gluten-free diet, and he's looking at me. Isn't that great? They're saying it to me. They're not even saying anything to the child. You'd be like, oh my gosh, that's good looking. Look more. Look at me. Please keep looking. You want to keep inviting it. So we'll find, there are all these ways. There's like 25 things to learn about the attitude, and 25 things to learn about joining, and like 25 things to learn about celebrating. But most fundamentally, it starts with appreciating that that's hard. If a person with autism could look at you and talk to you comfortably and easily, they wouldn't be autistic, and B, we wouldn't have a program, and it'd be a non-issue. But the point is, if it's hard, that starts the ball rolling of, I don't look at people, I wonder if I have anything in common with people, I don't have anything in common, I don't practice my talking skills, etc. So you want to, when she does things that are interactive, you want to note that and make a mental note, that was challenging. She's doing the thing I want. So let's talk briefly about what those things are that we want. That's how we're doing for time, 17 minutes. Okay, so we want to have what we consider to be the components of interaction, which are that identified by our program, which are that I'm looking at you and you're looking at me dynamically. I'm looking from eye to eye. We're talking, that kind of thing. Somebody who's just staring, and I can even do this. I'm going to stare at the middle of your glasses. It's just flat. It's like it doesn't move. At a certain point, you realize, or I can stare at your ear or the side of your glasses. It's like a glazed look. Like I'm just staring right there. So when you talk to me, go ahead and try to talk to me. It's like, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you doing today? I really like your shirts. Your hair looks nice. I like the way you did your makeup.
Okay, so do you sense that I'm just glazed? Mm-hmm. So that there are times she could be staring at you and it's not an actual look. So thank you, that's very good, actually. That's good. Okay, that was excellent, actually. So we'll talk some more, and that's good. Well, I'm going to touch on that briefly. It's not as important as the celebrating the interaction. When somebody's interacting with you who's autistic in our program, in my program anyway, you want to your number one job is and always will be until the very end of the program to celebrate the interaction. It's more important to celebrate that it's happening in some way, even if she talks to you now and she talks to you 2 minutes from now, talks to you 5 or 10 minutes from now, whatever it is. It's more important you celebrate that than that you do the next thing, which is the other component of interactive, sort of like useful behavior, which is adding variety. So let's imagine you and I just started a conversation. That was great. Let's say, what did you say? I like your shirt. I mean, all is great. So if Anna says to you, hey, your name is Stephanie, and you said those things, oh, and I like your hair and I like your shirt. And she might say, your shirt looks, I think it is kind of a little leopardy looking, or something like that. So, oh, it's got spots. And you can have this whole conversation like, oh, wow, it does have spots. You could say things like a behavior to add variety, like, do you want to try it on? That's like a behavior, like let's do an activity. Or you could say, ooh, you could tell her about things like, I have one at home that has like really bright like neon stripes or something like that. Maybe I can bring it next time. She would say, yeah, maybe I could do that. And you could say, look, it's got a great feel to it. Do you want to feel it? Like that's actually kind of another behavioral activity.
Like a physical interaction.
Yeah, anything that adds to, she's already identified she's interested in the shirt by saying that shirt has spots. So now that she's interested in that shirt, you'd want to now do something with that. You wouldn't say, oh, I drove over here. You wouldn't want to just completely divorce it from what just happened. Say, I drove over here in my Jeep and I got stuck on the way. Now, actually, that's a kind of an interesting thing to add, but it's not really building off of what you just said. It's much more likely that she's going to go with the thing that you say if it's connected in some way to what she just said. So if she says something like, look, it's Pinkie. She has this new horse called Pinkie Pie. We had this wonderful person, one of my best people ever, leaving today, who was going off to be a occupational therapist for real and all that. She's graduating and everything. And she gave Anna this little Pinkie Pie horse. Okay, with the My Little Pony. So Anna might be saying, "Oh, look, I got Pinkie Pie," and then she drops it. Let's say you could say, "Oh my gosh, you dropped. I dropped my." All this is true, by the way. Everything I have people add is not made up because there's so much cool, fascinating stuff in reality. Don't make things up. You just, unless you're completely tongue in cheek and she knows you're making things about like you can fly and all stuff. You really want to just say, oh, I dropped groceries in my garage and like the dressing broke in the bag. And I had to clean it all up and it like went like that and it was like red everywhere because it was like, what's that called? The dressing, I forget what it's called. But anyways, you can have a real story that connects to dropping or connects to horses. Like, the horses have those manes. All those horses, My Little Ponies are totally made for beautician people. Like they're all like beautified. Like this one's got the straight hair, this one's got the curly hair. And so you could be like, oh, that's so cool. I did hair like that on a lady just like a couple days ago. I could do that on you. Or let's do braiding on your hair. Like this horse has braiding. We could do that on you. Like this is an example of how you add things. Rather than most people go in there and sort of by habit quiz. So what's your favorite color? She'll say like, I like pink. It's like, of course, oh, why do you like, well, it's just all question. Do you like pink? It seems like you like pink. Do you like dogs? Yeah, I like dogs. It's like all people fall into this habit of just asking a question where you flip it and say, maybe you're thinking about dogs. Say, I like dogs. I saw a dog in the elevator on the way up the elevator here today. That's adding something. So every time you find yourself about to ask her a question, you think to ask yourself, say, like, I don't want this to be Quizmaster. I want this to be, I'm adding something. Like this child really like feels like she knows me because I said something about I had a dog and I dropped my groceries and I did people's hair all day. And I made these glasses on my own because they're really cool and I ordered them to look just right because I understand beauty. Or I did my eyes. That's all adding things. Okay, so again, during the interaction, number one thing is to celebrate that the interaction is happening by cheering in some way. You can sing, you can clap, you can say, that's really great, good looking. I love that question. I love that you told me that. Now I understand. Like, I love that you asked me that. There's all these different ways of saying it. And then there's just cheering, or like when she comes back from ISM, she's going like, wow, wow, wow. Oh, that's good looking. Do you want to hold the horse and do races with the horse now? So you go right on, like you make it fun, but you celebrate that she looked because she came back out of autism. And that at that moment you celebrate, then you move on to adding things. Okay, the last thing is positioning for what I call mutual peripheral vision. And what I mean by that is everybody's got like I don't know if you can see this in the recording, but it's like a 90-degree angle that if you put your hands out straight, like your arms are straight, right? And you put like let's say number of fingers out, like 2 fingers, right? That if you go at a certain angle, don't use your arms bent or you can't tell what you're doing with the angles. Okay, so if you put your arms out straight like this, okay, people have like a 90, I don't know if you can show this, it's like a 90, that they can see their fingers without having to like be doing this. You know what I mean? And basically, our child has a 90 and you have a 90. So for example, if you, and you might actually have to get up for this. Can you go ahead and get up and we'll maybe do this maybe right there and I have to have you more. So basically if I'm here, and actually come closer, let's see if we can get your arms on camera, but not all of you, so I don't have to worry about like publicity rights. Come closer, okay? Just get your arms on camera, but not you. Look, she's actually here. There is a person, I wasn't lying. Okay, so I was being very nice about all this. Okay, so I have you and I are seeing each other, even if I'm not actively trying to see you, if I'm Anna and I'm suddenly having a conversation and I'm suddenly like this, like looking off here, you are still in my 90-degree vision. So even if I'm staring at this light switch right here, and you don't have to hold your hands there for just a second, if I do something like I'm Anna and I'm doing this, you can join me. So go ahead and join me. Like do whatever it is I'm doing. And when I say when I do joining, or instruct about joining, is join everything, add nothing. I mean, join everything safely. So don't be doing headstands and hurt your neck or something. But join everything and add nothing. So basically, if I'm doing this, you don't want to be going like, oh, my head feels, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to be adding stuff. So then she's doing this. And then she's like, you even join the yawn because you don't know it's part of the ism, right? right? Okay, so let's practice this for a minute. So if I'm her and I'm looking at the light switch, you don't want to be looking at me because she's not looking at you. She's looking away from you because that's what the isms always have involved. They never are looking dynamically at your eyes and they're isming. And if they are looking at your eyes, they are interacting and you want to be celebrating and adding variety. You can join the pieces of the isms. She could be looking sideways and do this thing with the finger like she used to do. And you could say, she could be looking at you, you could be like, oh, that's good looking. Hey, why? I noticed you like pushing there. Does that feel kind of good? Because I've heard there's a pressure point there, like an acupressure point that helps your vision. I know you can have conversation about it. Good looking. And my sister, she actually wears glasses like this. I'm glad you're looking at my glasses, but you just keep going with something as you're talking. But if she looks away, which is mostly what she's doing when she's isming, like I'm gonna look at the light switch, you now don't want to be watching her. Otherwise, it's a little bit like you are. I'm not going to answer that. It's a little bit like you are like she's an animal in the zoo. Like when somebody's watching you on a bus from a distance, it doesn't feel good. You're just like, you always start identifying somebody's like staring at me from so let's say she's staring at this light switch. You want to kind of offset a little bit and stare at something, let's say right here, so that your 90 and my 90 still overlap. I can see you without trying. You can see me without trying. Okay? And if basically she shifts suddenly, like she goes like this. Okay, now look at my arms. Her 90's here. Yes, exactly. You'd want to move over. Keep going a little bit this way. You can't obviously move very far, but now you'd be joining her from there. And moreover, if you come back to center, that 90 degrees is really a three-dimensional cone because there's a height to it too. Right now, if you stare right at me, I know I can't see past here. I can't even see my arm is here from here back. So if she's sitting on the floor and you're kind of up higher than her, it's like she can only see your legs and down. And if you're doing all this great joining up here, she's going to see legs. She doesn't see the joining piece. So you want to always think about, like, as she's moving her vision around. If she's lying, she'll lie. I can't do this well on the camera, but she'll lie down on the mattress, on like 6 inches from, or whatever, 8 inches from the floor, looking down at a magazine, like a Calvin and Hobbes. Like she's got her book open like this on the floor, and she's like this. Okay, you have to be in this zone, or she's literally all she's going to see is like your feet again, or something like that. So you want to get down on the floor, lying on your side, or have your book out like this, but not in her space. So we'll talk some more about positioning, but positioning says a lot about your level of interest in that person, the fact that you're focusing on them versus you're just standing there while she's like, okay, I'm looking at this book, and there's that person just standing there, just doing their own thing, like they're not joining me, like she won't be able to see it. And seeing the ism being joined is more powerful than just hearing that you're, say, flipping pages and she's flipping pages. I did an experiment when she was younger that I identified really notably quicker coming out of her isms when she could see me as well as hear me. So for a lot of times at night, she had this book she read every night, and I was lying, like the book was up in the air, and there was like a pillow there so she wouldn't fall off her bed, and I was reading the book, and I was on the other side of the pillow so she couldn't see me. She would ism going, making sounds looking at the book, and I would do that and she couldn't see me. And I eventually started getting up on my arm, kind of like off the bed, just because I was thinking, gee, this is taking forever to read this book every single night. I got up on my elbow and she would come out of her ism almost every time. The minute I'd say, right about, I could see her peripherally, right about here. The minute I thought the word here, she would say, yes, keep reading. Or what did keep reading, Mom? Or so trust me, it's really powerful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to review briefly. We have a minute and a half we won't keep under 30 minutes. So you're going to decide to be happy and enjoy yourself in this child's presence without requiring any condition. That's the attitude. I have ways of helping you with that, by the way, if that's at all challenges. This is like an order. If you have any issues, we have a whole philosophy that supports your choosing that and being comfortable with that, and we'll work on that later. Number two, and there's nothing important except for the relationship and enjoying her. That's the most important goal. It's not important to have her talk or get her to do anything. Number two is you're going to join when she goes into her own world, do your best, and you're going to spend most of your time trying to figure out whether she's in our world or not, and then apply either celebrating that she's interacting and adding variety, like you might for a normal child, or joining if she's not. So you're going to spend time discerning which one. The last thing is you're going to position so that you are always in the 90, so she can kind of always see without trying, because she's not trying when she's going into her own world. You want to be able to see you in the corner of her eye, doing what she's doing. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. I might cut it off because it's 29 and 30 seconds. But is there anything you have? It's a really quick question.
I don't.
Okay, so you're going to be in this playroom one-on-one with her, and it'll be about anywhere from, it'll probably be at least 30 minutes. And it feels like about half of that. People report that it feels about half as much time as it actually is. it's something about being really mentally present. You being in the moment with her, like focusing on being with her, not on what's going to come later or how you're going to do or what I'm going to do, think about it, or how I might judge it. Just think about enjoying her and not thinking about the future at all. Okay, so have fun. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. Thank you for coming. I look forward to having you in the playroom. Bye.